Hey, everybody, and welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. This is Katie Weaver, and I'm here with my co-anchor, sister, and partner in crime, Kristi Brower. Hello.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
We're so happy to be here. This is our second Patreon of the month, and
I know, and we're doing something fun tonight. I mean, we always do something fun.
Yeah,
but I really like this.
Though. Yeah. Well, and I just love doing the Patreon episodes. I feel like we take a step into our inner circle, when we do the Patreon episodes, because you guys, whether you like it or not, you're in the inner circle. Because you help us and you support us, and we appreciate you more than words will ever be able to express.
Absolutely true.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode was born from me finding the weirdest freaking story I have ever heard and wanting to bring it to you guys and thinking that maybe Kristi could find a weird story too.
Well, I did. I don't know if it's as weird as yours, but I did find a weird story.
Maybe we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is, I'm going to present a story to Kristi and she's going to read it, and then she'll present a story to me and I'll read it. And we'll see where we go from there. You guys read it too and see what you think. I'm going to start. So my story is about the mystery of the fishing boat Fausto. And I have to say that Hello Lurker here on Reddit did a marvelous job of putting this story together, and I will share a link in the chat room or in the show info for you if you want to go and read the whole story. But they I have to give them a huge heads up because they did a lot of work. Everything about this story was in Spanish, and they translated it into English so that we could experience this story. It's pretty cool. So the fishing boat Fausto, I'm going to share a picture here of it. This is Fausto.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or El Fausto, the Faust, was a fishing boat. It was ported in Tazacorte, La Palma Island. This is in the Canary Islands.
Okay.
And the Canary Islands were a part of Spain. This was in the 1960s. She was 46 feet long and 20 tons. For her category of being a fishing boat, she was pretty big, and so she was frequently used for transportation of fruits, vegetables, diesel, other kinds of goods across the archipelago. I hope I'm saying that correctly. She was big and durable, and she had a really good engine in her, and so she was used a lot for all kinds of things besides fishing. So in 1968, this guy named Rafael Acosta owned the boat, and he had two brothers named Ramon and Iliberto that were the crew on this boat, and also their cousins. So it was two brothers and two cousins, Miguel and Viterbo. And these four men were experienced sailors. They had been running this, boats forever, and they knew what they were doing. They were sailors and fishermen from the time they were teenagers, and they were all in their late 30s, early 40s at the time.
Okay. So yeah, got experience.
Yeah, this was their boat, and they would run between different islands, and haul people and stuff and fish, and this is what this boat did.
Mm-hmm.
So, on June 20th, 1968, the Fausto leaves Tazacorte, and they go to El Hierro Island, and that's about 50 miles away from La Palma. So they're not a really long ways away, but it's about a 6-8 hour traverse depending on the conditions. So she actually carried a cargo of explosives that day that would be used for agricultural purposes to that island. Viterbo was not on the island that day. There was a local festivity going on, and he was a part of it. And so he had been able to take a little time off And so it was just the other three men. So Ramon, Miguel, and Eliberto.
Okay.
And it took them 7 hours to get to Frontera, which was the northern shore of El Hierro. And they unloaded the cargo. And then there was a man there who was also from Tazacorte who needed to get back there. He was a mechanic and he was doing some work over on this other island, but he had just received word from his wife that their 2-month-old daughter was really, really sick and that he needed to come home. So apparently there was a boat that he should have been able to get on. There was a liner that went between islands, and he
Mm-hmm.
missed it by just a few minutes.
No.
So somebody said, well, hey, these guys over here are from there. Maybe they would give you a ride. And so his name was Julio. So Julio approaches these guys and says, hey, I've got a sick baby. I'm in a predicament. Could you possibly give me a ride? And they said that they would be happy to. He even tried to pay them, and they said, absolutely not. We're going anyway. And we're missing a crew member. We have room. Come on board.
Yeah.
So this picture is of the sailors. This is Ramon, Miguel, and Eliberto.
Okay.
And then this is Julio.
Oh, with his baby.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So I'll take that one down and we'll keep going here. So that's who's on the boat, is those four. So they get on the boat, and sometime in the early hours of July 21st, something goes wrong. And this is a crew that has taken this route a billion times. There's nothing interesting going on. It's the weather is clear. Some fishermen say that there was a light mist in the early morning hours, but that was about it. There was nothing that they couldn't have easily, navigated through. It was no big deal. But they should have returned to the island about 10 a.m. and they did not. And their family started to get really worried. And so Rafael, the owner of the boat, he sent another of his boats out to just sail the same path, just go straight from here to there, just like anybody would, followed their exact same planned route to hope to find them. Well, they don't see anything. And nothing. And no one has seen them. None of the fishermen that would be out in those waters on the El Hierro side or on the La Palma side, like no one has seen a thing. And it's just so weird. So they're thinking maybe they had a mechanical failure, maybe they floated adrift somewhere. And so they just wait because they know that these men are capable and they're mechanics, and he figures they'll be okay. But still by later in the day, they have not heard a word from them, haven't seen a thing. So Raphael finally contacts the authorities and a search and rescue team. So an emergency message is radioed out to all of the ships around the area and to let them know that there is a boat, the La Fausto, that's missing at sea. And they even send out a plane to try to find them. They send a rescue plane out to fly that entire area to see what he can see. Nothing at all. So now they're starting to think maybe they sunk. Maybe this is not a boat adrift. Maybe this boat actually sunk, and their families are really, really getting worried.
Oh, yeah.
So on July 25th, now
Did they
remember,
even know Julio was on the boat?
Julio's wife knew yes, they knew. Julio's wife knew he was on the boat. Yeah.
Okay.
So on July 25th, now remember, they went missing on July 21st. A boat called the Duchessa, or Duchess, was a British reefer ship that came upon a boat that was adrift. And they approached it, and it was the Fausto. So they were 120 miles west of their original route. And so the British vessel confirms that it is them. And Ramon, Eliberto, Miguel, and Julio are there, and they're alive. And they're dehydrated and hungry and sunburned and unhappy, but they're there and okay. So they radio back to La Palma and let them know, hey, we found them. They're okay. So they give them food, they give them water, they offer to tow them back to La Palma. And they say no. They said, no, we just need enough fuel and food to make it back to La Palma. We'll be fine. That's all we need. And they won't give them any real answer as to what happened or why the hell are you clear out here and what's going on. They have no answers. They don't give them anything. They just tell them, just give us fuel and food and we'll come back on our own. So they do. And they said they gave them plenty of food to make it, or fuel to make it back 2 times over. They gave them lots of food, lots of water, everything they should need. So, they are now 120 miles away, which means that it's going to take them quite a bit longer, somewhere around 12, 14 hours for them to come back. So the families are so relieved and they're so excited. And it's, oh my God, everyone feels like they've dodged a bullet, and this is an article about it from the paper. But anyway, it's a huge relief. And so there's a big festivity, a big party that's starting on the docks about the time they're supposed to be home. And all the family members are there, and there's drinking and food and music, and it's just a huge celebration. So an hour comes and goes and they're not there. 2 hours come and go and they're not there. Hours and hours and hours pass and no Fausto, no ship. And by the next day, they have to decide that La Fausto is lost at sea again. So then, 2 months later, the Anna Di Maio comes across the Fausto. This is an Italian merchant ship en route to Venezuela. And they spot this boat bobbing along, and it's not a boat that should be in the middle of the ocean. This is cross-oceanic sailing now, and this little boat is bobbing along, and it should not be there. And there's no one at the wheel. So they decide to board. So the first mate, Luciano Asacone, and a deck sailor both get on the ship. And the ship seems fine. It's in good condition. There's nothing wrong. There's no violence or damage to the ship. There's just no people on it. There's no logbook in the cabin. There's nothing to explain what happened. The ship looks completely fine. Like, they have no idea why there's not people on this ship. So they open the hatch to head down into the engine room and discover a dead person, a dead man. He's lying face up on the floor, completely naked. He has a transistor radio next to him. He is quite decayed. He's been dead for a while, but because it's the ocean and there's salt water, he's kind of mummified.
Mm-hmm.
So they felt like if they could get this boat back to where it belonged, that they would be able to probably identify him. So they start searching around in there for anything else to get a clue of what could have happened or what's going on here. And he finds a notebook that he thought maybe belonged to the dead man. And most of the pages had been torn out. It was one of those little tall ones, with the loops at the top.
Yeah. Like the steno book.
Yeah. So the first few pages have numbers on them and calculations and notes in Spanish. Then there's lots of pages missing. And then on the last page, there is a note written in Spanish, and he couldn't quite detail it, but he figured it was some kind of a goodbye letter. So he takes that, and the only other documents he can find are some insurance documents. And so then they get on the radio and start trying to figure out where this boat belongs.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally make contact with authorities in La Palma, and they tell them that they are going to tow it to Venezuela, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can come and deal with it there. So they hook it up to their boat and have it all set to tow it. And the next day, the authorities in La Palma receive a message from them that the boat sunk in the night. Not the Anna de Mayo, but the Fausto.
The Fausto.
Yep. They said it sunk during the night, ripping and dragging the towing cable with it. So it sunk bow first violently, and they have no idea why. So, of course, the body of the person that was there, they lost that too. So they go back to Venezuela and they send the paperwork that they could find there back to La Palma. So the other things were just paperwork that didn't really mean anything. But the notebook page was written by Julio, and it was a farewell to his wife. He let her know how to proceed with insurances that he had purchased in the light of his death, how to sell the properties that they owned so that she would have the money she needed. And then he said, don't ever tell their son, they had a 5-year-old son, don't ever tell him all that has happened to me. You know that God wanted this fate for me. I love you. And he had written his name and his address at the bottom of the page. So his wife, Luz, looked at it and said, yeah, definitely this was his writing. And she recognized the notebook. She said he would keep that notebook to keep his notes in of who he'd done work for and how much they owed him.
Mm-hmm.
But they determined that 28 pages were missing. So they think that there were things written in this detailing what happened to them that got torn out. So, and interestingly, Luz is still alive.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she still has the letter. And this is what it looks like.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where the story ends. There's no, we don't know what was written on those pages, who pulled them out and why. Where did the rest of the men end up? They all had families. They all had families on shore waiting for them. Why wouldn't they let the Duchess tow them back to La Palma in the first place? And what the hell happened in general? It's such a puzzler. But that's really where the story ends. There were a few theories of the day. One is that they were actually trying to run away and go to Venezuela to reach a better life. That seems unlikely because they had family. And actually, they all had good lives. Yeah. They witnessed something they weren't supposed to see at sea, which was during the Cold War. So people felt very suspicious of what was going on in the water. You know, was this Russia with a submarine or something like that, you know, or USSR or whatever, you know, they don't know. Is it possible that they were trafficking guns or drugs or something and, you know, ended up in trouble because of what they were doing with some bad guys, or were trying to avoid getting in trouble with maritime authorities? Was there something that they were doing that was illegal? That was one thought. There was a theory at the time that is super specific, but a lot of people believed this, that a Nazi fugitive had been hiding out in El Hierro and needed to escape to South America and had taken over their ship. I don't know. Actually, apparently at the time, a lot of people believed something along those lines. So, but that's where the story goes cold. There's nothing else. So, do your best. What do you think?
You know, I feel like they experienced some kind of out on the ocean, there are these very specific extreme weather events that we can't explain and that don't happen like to everyone. And this may be unpopular, but I feel like they were actually all dead when they found them the first time. and that they were not interacting with them in the physical.
Ah,
I
okay.
kind of feel like something really fast happened to them that killed them, all but Julio, killed the other three guys almost instantly. I feel like it was something that had to do with like sucking the oxygen out of the air, or all of a sudden they just couldn't breathe. He was below deck, and so he lived longer. But that when they actually found the boat that time, they didn't know they were dead, but they were dead. Their bodies were gone, except for Julio's, because his was in the hole in the bottom. But I don't feel like that was actually them. And that's why the whole thing seems so dismissive, is because they weren't communicating with him as the living.
Well, they weren't communicating with their radio.
I feel like they actually got sucked off the boat. Like something just happened. It
Julio
suffocated them.
Oh no, Julio had the radio.
Right.
The radio.
No, not Julio. Julio was below deck when this happened. Yeah. So the other three were dead.
Okay.
And he died of lack of water.
Yeah. Dehydration.
Yeah. But I don't think that any of them were alive when they found them. When they found them the first time, I think they were all dead then.
Interesting.
And that the other three men's bodies were actually sucked off the boat. There's just something about air and wind and some really violent thing that happened that was just like an instantaneous thing.
Wow. Okay.
As far as it sinking after the other boat found it, that was sabotage. There were people on the boat that found it that were very superstitious and were not comfortable at all with them towing this boat and the dead man, and they didn't know what was wrong, and they sunk it themselves. Like not the officials on the boat, but there were other people on that boat that went,
the deckhands or something.
We don't want anything to do with this. We're going to end up with an evil spirit or something, and they sunk it.
Okay.
I feel like that was very much intentional.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
But it was this really, really violent weather event that just was it happened really fast. And then here's Julio that it's not even his boat. He's not even a sailor, like he's just stuck. And he didn't live because he didn't have any water.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, wow. What a deal. Can you imagine? I was so sad for them partying on the shore, so excited and happy and relieved that they were okay, and then not coming.
No, it's yeah. It's because they were
and then not knowing clear until October that the boat was found again. Yeah, that's a hell of a story.
Yikes.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Whew. That is a weird story.
Yeah. I told you we were going weird.
All right. You ready for my weird story?
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is not so much a read as it is a please correct all of this really incorrect metaphysical and spiritual stuff. I'll just say that.
Okay.
So this is the Hammersmith Ghost murder case.
Okay.
So this happened in 1804. And it actually set a legal precedent in the UK about self-defense.
Oh.
Because the question came down to, could you be held liable for your actions if you killed somebody when you thought they were someone else? In this case, when you thought they were a ghost.
Ooh.
So in Hammersmith, which is an area of London, near the end of 1803, there were people who kept saying that they had seen or been attacked by a ghost. The locals in the area believed that the ghost was the spirit of a man who had taken his own life. And so they started having these patrols out in the community. The police and other men were patrolling. So on the 3rd of January, 1904, an excise officer named Francis Smith was out patrolling. And So they think that, okay, let me just keep going here. I'm messing this up. Um, so people thought that the ghost was haunting this community because they had been buried, their body had been buried in consecrated ground, and so this suicide victim's soul was not at rest because they're not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground if they take their own
Ah,
life. Okay. So,
boo.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I know there's a lot of this stuff that I'm like, no, all wrong, all wrong. But it's a very interesting story, like how this played out.
Yeah.
So the apparition that they're seeing is this really tall man dressed all in white. But sometimes they also see it wearing horns and large glass eyes.
Hmm.
I don't know. Scary, people are scared. They think that this is happening. Um, so there were two women, and one was an elderly woman, another one was pregnant, and they said they'd been seized by the ghost on various occasions while walking by the churchyard. They were so scared they died of shock a few days afterward.
Wow.
Yeah. Another guy, he was a servant, his name was Thomas Groom. He testified that he was walking through the churchyard with someone else one night about 9 p.m., and something rose from behind a tombstone and grabbed him by the throat. His friend turned around to see what was happening. Um, and oh, weird. Yeah. So the ghost says he gave him, like, he twisted and looked at him, and then he saw nothing. And then he pushed with his fist, like he tried to hit it, and he kind of felt something soft when he hit the ghost, like maybe it was like in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
So people were really freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
And various people had chased it. One question I have for you is if this was actually a real person doing these things.
Some of it was, yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like some of it, some people really did see an apparition. I think then you had someone who, yeah, was lurking around being creepy because it was working. They were getting a rise out
Yes.
of people. And I feel
That's
like
my
in that case, that's what that was. That was a real person that
yeah.
was just being an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my sense of it, is that this was a real person doing this.
Hmm.
So people are just completely freaked out. So
Yeah.
they have this guy, William Girdler, he's the night watchman, and he saw the ghost one night and chased it. They say that it threw off its shroud and managed to escape. Seems like a
Oh,
person to
shit.
me.
Not the shroud.
So, yeah. So they formed these citizen patrols, basically, is what
Mhm.
happened. So on making his rounds, William Girdler, who was the night watchman in the area, was patrolling with Francis Smith.
Okay.
And Smith had a shotgun, and he said he was looking for the ghost.
Mhm.
And Girdler said he was going to join Smith after he had called the hour. Remember this? 11 p.m. and all's well. That was this guy's job, okay? He was the night watchman and he had to call every hour.
I
So he
remember
said,
that with all my heart because
"You what?"
Robin Hood,
Yes, Robin Hood, exactly. Same
Disney's
thing.
Robin Hood is my favorite Disney movie of all time. There will never be anything better.
I
And
know,
they
me
say
too.
that, and that's how I know the
Yep,
end.
me too. The end. Yeah. So basically, Girdler tells Smith, "Okay, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to come with you as soon as I call the hour at 11. I'll meet up with you and let's go after this ghost." So here goes Francis Smith with his shotgun, thinking he's, out there
Hmm.
really doing something. And he comes across a man named Thomas Millwood. So Millwood was a bricklayer. And
Okay.
apparently at the time, bricklayers wore all white. They wore
Uh-oh.
linen trousers and a waistcoat and an apron, and everything was white.
Hmm.
I don't know why. Kind of like painters a lot of times wear
Yeah.
white. So he's just walking home from a visit with his family. And along comes self-appointed Officer Smith with his
This
shotgun.
crazy idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's, out to get the ghost for sure. And so Smith runs up to Millwood and yells, "Damn you, who are you and what are you? Damn you, I'll shoot you." And then he didn't actually give him a chance to answer. He just shot him in the face and killed him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So everyone comes running, of course, because people hear this, and everyone thinks that, Smith thinks he's gotten the ghost and, he's actually murdered an actual real person.
Oh.
So they take Smith into custody because, he killed a guy.
Yeah.
And, they did confirm that he was, in fact, a live human person who had been murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So Francis Smith goes on trial for murder. And I guess Thomas Millwood's wife had warned him that he should be wearing a coat over his white clothes because he was going to get mistaken for the ghost.
Mm.
And so here's some of her testimony at the Old Bailey trial.
It's further proof that you should always listen to your wife.
Always, right? She said, "On Saturday evening, he and I were at home, for he lived with me." Yeah, they were married. He said he had frightened two ladies and a gentleman who were coming along the terrace in a carriage. For that, the man said he dared to say, "There goes the ghost."
Oh.
And he said he was no more a ghost than he was, and asked him, using a bad word, did he want a punch of the head? "I begged of him to change his dress, Thomas," says I, "as there is a piece of work about the ghost, and your clothes look white. Pray do put on your greatcoat, that you may not run any danger." Sadly, he did not listen to his wife.
Come on, man.
Yeah. So then apparently Millwood's sister kind of witnessed what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she heard Smith call to her brother to stop or he would shoot, but then Smith fired the gun immediately. Like, he didn't actually give him a chance to stop or say who he was.
Right.
So they determined, so Lord Chief Baron Sir Archibald MacDonald, who was the judge, advised the jury that malice was not required of murder, merely an intent to kill. Because basically, Smith is saying it was a case of mistaken identity. So Lord Chief Baron MacDonald also said, "I should betray my duty and injure the public security if I did not persist in asserting that this is a clear case of murder. If the facts be proved to your satisfaction, all killing, whatever amounts to murder, unless justified by law or in self-defense. In some cases of involuntary acts or some sufficiently violent provocation, it becomes manslaughter. Not one of these circumstances occurs here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you just had a scared idiot that wanted to be a hero.
Yeah, he really did. And
shoot a ghost? Shoot a ghost.
I know. The whole thing was like, you're going to shoot. Well, because the one guy had punched the ghost. And so now they are thinking maybe the ghost can be shot,
Yes.
So the judge, one of the last things he said to the jury was that previously good character of the accused meant nothing in this case. And he directed the jury to find the accused guilty of murder if they believed the facts presented by the witness. So they only considered for an hour, and they returned the verdict of manslaughter. So basically they had the choice to say it was murder or manslaughter. They came back with manslaughter. And MacDonald, the judge, informed the court that they could not receive such a verdict, and they must either find him guilty of murder or acquit him.
Oof. rolling the
And he
dice.
said that the fact that Smith believed that he was a ghost was irrelevant, which I think is wow.
Wow.
So then the jury came back with guilty because they didn't want to let him,
Just
get
go.
off. So of
Yeah.
course he was sentenced to death. And the judge said he was reporting this case to the king
Oh.
to let the king decide if he would, oh my gosh, his sentence would either be hanging and dissection
What?
or could be commuted to hard labor. Yeah.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
And what did the king
So,
say?
well, I think he got hard labor.
Mm.
He got hard labor. And then this question, I guess, has been a big question in UK law for like 180 years about how do we deal with this issue of mistaken identity. And so it's actually really affected the way they look at self-defense and the way that they look at, if someone was killed mistakenly and stuff. So it's kind of interesting because this case still gets discussed in UK law even now.
Uh-huh.
So a few questions
Yeah.
for you. First of all, will you please clear up what they had to say about the man who took his own life needing to be buried in consecrated ground and all that dumb stuff?
Yes, my God. This has been going on for a very long time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
As a professional medium that has worked with many, many, many suicide victim families over the years, people that kill themselves go the same place everybody else does.
Right.
They're not in trouble. So many things are said that they can't go to heaven, that they can't, that they'll have to wander the earth for 100 years, that they're going to be in deep shit when they get to the other side. None of that is true.
No.
They jumped out of the kitchen. It got too hot. It's awful. It's sad. I'm not endorsing suicide, but this idea that people who commit suicide are now separated in every way from their families because they're just so bad is absolutely, completely wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And should be buried with the very same dignity and respect as anybody else.
Right.
It makes me so mad. You see somebody die from cancer and everybody goes, oh my God, he was such a great guy. And they do all the celebrations for his life and they bury him and there's so much respect. And then his neighbor who has been depressed for 30 years kills himself and we lie about it. We brush it under the rug. We have these fake funerals that we say a lot of things that aren't true, or we don't have a funeral at all. People do the weirdest stuff around suicide, and it's so disrespectful to that person and the actual life they had. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's enough on that. I could do that for an hour, but
I know, me too. I was like, oh, no. So you kind of answered my other question, which was the Hammersmith Ghost actually just a person taking advantage of the fact that everyone was freaked out?
Yes and no. I do think that there had been an entity that had been seen. I think there'd been an entity that had been seen in the town before. Like it wasn't new to have some ghostly stuff. I don't think that was completely new. Yeah. But was there somebody dressing in white wandering around scaring the shit out of people? Oh yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Did the old woman and the pregnant woman really? Oh, what?
That dust up in the cemetery, where he got punched. That was a person that got punched. You can't punch a ghost. You can't. Are you sure that shoot a ghost? Spirit. Stupid. Yeah.
What about the old woman and the pregnant woman who died of fright? Do you think that's what really happened?
No. No, I don't. I feel like they died of some kind of food poisoning.
Oh.
Or something along those lines. Like they were.
I think one of those false equivalencies.
False equivalency. I feel like they were exposed to the same thing, whatever it was, and they both died. And it was easy to say, well, they died of fright. They didn't die of fright. I think they both got sick. I feel like that happened. They were very scared. Right after that, they ended up both ill because of something that they'd eaten. I really feel like it was a foodborne illness. But they
Mhm,
ate the same
mhm,
thing and they both got sick. Anyway,
mhm. Okay.
yeah.
Well, I found the Hammersmith Ghost very interesting, and I'd never
Me too.
considered the, idea of if your defense for murdering someone would be, "I thought they were a ghost." Turns out you still get in trouble for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially when you demand to know who they are and then immediately pump full of lead. You really
Yeah,
should wait and, let them respond.
you're kind of a crappy ghost hunter in that case, I'm just saying.
This guy was just a big jackass. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Yup.
he was. Well, there's my
All right.
story for you.
Well, there you have it. Two very weird cases. That was our goal. We wanted to be weird, and I think we've accomplished it. So, thank you guys so much for being our patrons. We appreciate you beyond measure, and we'll be back next month with two more cases for you. So, and all of
Sure.
our other spiel, right? So,
Yeah.
it's all happening right here at True Crime Paranormal. So, take care. This has been yet another production of True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters.
Thanks, guys.